Afternoon. My name is Ray Albany. I'm president of Acadia University, and I want to thank Danny and Bob's family for affording me the privilege to share a few words about Bob's connection to this wonderful institution. I think many know that Bob arrived here in the fall of 1961 and began an incredible relationship with this university. And while some have offered that it's perhaps surprising that that has endured for such a period of time for him to find essentially his new home here, in some ways I do not find it surprising at all, and let me explain why. In my conversations with Bob about him coming from Prince Edward Island to here, it was about a sense of opportunity and just going to university, and particularly coming to Acadia. And if you think of the very founding traditions of this university on providing opportunity for students, regardless of barrier, and then to challenge them to be their very best, there could not have been a better match than Bob and Acadia University. And, you know, his embracing of Acadia as his alma mater makes so much sense. The term comes from the Latin, nourishing mother. And in the same way that he saw this institution as nourishing him, he immediately, as he returned to it, in the admissions role, became the nourishing father to so many. And I was sharing with some family members just before we began today that we have been in receipt of numerous emails from students describing their connection with Bob and their entry point into Acadia that changed their lives, and very much putting a fine point that it was only Bob's sometimes creative use of our admissions criteria that gave them the opportunity to have this institution change their lives. And look, with all due respect to admissions directors and registrars, I would ask each of you gathered here today, those that have not come through these halls and have not come through Bob's office, how many of you formed lifelong friendships with your admissions officer? Right? And I'll tell you, before I met Bob in person, that's what I heard through a series of alumni events as we went right across the country, where people just sought me out to explain their personal journey through Bob into this institution. So in one ways, the connection, the values, look, others will describe his work in community, but I can tell you I learned many things from Bob Stead, but the depth of his understanding of a communitarian view of the world is something that, you know, that I will forever treasure, and he certainly understands it around this institution. So let me tell you about another rich learning experience I had at Bob's hand. And this time I'm here now at Acadia, and he's been incredibly welcoming and warm to me as I bridged into the institution and into the community. So we've been having several conversations early on about how to deepen the connection between Acadia and the community, to be like our students, to see no barriers whatsoever between the campus and town, and work that we continue to today to try to transcend town and gown to make it better. So Bob, of course, I'm sure is consuming this, but thinking about where he wants to go with this conversation. And not shy about expressing himself, so I'm warning you, I'm setting myself up for what's about to happen here. So we're sitting early on in the conversation in council chambers, actually, and he's met with the folks that were doing the developmental work around finding a permanent indoor home for the farmers market. So we're talking in this spirit of collaboration. So I, of course, as I see it today at least, fell into the trap. So I said, well, Bob, look, I said, we're using the facility fully now, so there's some challenges there, but can you give me a sense, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what kind of priority is this for the town? He said, that would be an 11. So I dutifully left and went back to do the work that we needed to do to form that partnership and that relationship. And And again, it's hard to imagine the town of Wolfville without it. And look, there are just so many stories of that ilk. But let me finish by returning to this room, actually, this wonderful, wonderful room. And while Bob was absolutely faithful in being here at convocations and other proceedings, the one that touches me most deeply is every September our matriculation ceremony, where our incoming students are formally admitted and welcomed to the university. And Bob would get the opportunity to address them. And as I look at it now, he was addressing them part as the mayor of Wolfville, but he was also back in that wonderful role of having an impact on their lives and welcoming them to the university. And much like the students that he admitted, they all left feeling a greater sense of responsibility to do their very best at Acadia. Because of that, he would do the same thing to the entire 900 incoming student class every year in that matriculation ceremony. So he introduced them to that same communitarian spirit that he believed so deeply in from the very, very first day. And I, like you, am deeply saddened by Bob's loss, but I'll close by saying to you that his connection with this university is so rich and so deep that it may have begun in 1961, but it will endure in perpetuity. They'll always be part of Bob.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Rye. I am a former deputy mayor of the town of Wolfville. I had the pleasure to serve with Bob for 11 years. And I again would like to thank Danny and the family for allowing me to participate in this service. But frankly, it's something I would have cheerfully postponed for the 10 or 15 years. Bob Stead served the town of Wolfville on council from 1988 to 2012, the last 15 years as our mayor. As I noted, it was my pleasure to serve 11 of those years with him, mostly as a deputy. What is not known is that before Bob entered municipal politics, my mother worked for him. Now, my mother was a wonderful lady. Dr. Fraser knew her well. But she could be single-minded, occasionally cantankerous, and was not afraid to tell you when you were wrong. I strongly believe that when she retired and she walked out of the office, Bob said, "Well, that wasn't bad. I should be able to survive municipal politics." It's not my intention today to review Bob's many accomplishments. You all know what they are. Rather, I want to talk a bit about the qualities that he brought to the office. It's my firm belief that when the UNSM granted him the first Ken Simpson Memorial Award for service in municipal government, it was not for the list of the things that he did, but rather for the ways he did it, and for the qualities that he exhibited, which were many of the same qualities that Ken Simpson, who the award was named for, had exhibited in his role as executive director of UNSM. Bob had a tremendous work ethic. He was in the office early every morning, tackling the pile of paper that every mayor receives. He was always ready to help everyone in the office. And I can tell you, if the office wasn't clean to his satisfaction, if the windows weren't quite right, he didn't ask somebody else to do it, he brought Danny in. And that's how he and Danny spent Saturday morning. He was always prepared for every meeting he attended, and let me tell you, he didn't miss many. He apologized when he took a vacation. Though I have to confess to you, with issues coming up like cell towers, he seemed to have an uncanny ability to know when to go on vacation. And away from Wolfville at UNSM or FCM gatherings, he attended every session. At FCM in particular, where there's a very large and complex agenda, Bob knew what he was going to do and had the entire 4 days mapped out before he left Wolfville. He was always looking for something he could gain that would help our community, and he was bitterly disappointed if a session didn't meet his expectations, and more bitterly disappointed if it was not properly run. He brought his organizational skills to council with careful agendas, and meetings were well organized. He He frowned and would not permit the kind of personal remarks and conflicts that have marred so many other councils. And good Lord help you if you were the one that wanted to take that meeting past 11 o'clock. That was not going to happen. In 11 years, it did not happen. He didn't talk much at a meeting as a chair. Some chairs, like somebody maybe on the stage, talk a lot. Bob tended not to talk that much, but when he said something, it was well thought out. He did, though, occasionally add a remark or a quip that would, if you weren't paying attention, cause your head to jerk up and say, did he really say what I think he said? My personal favorite was in a debate over whether or not we should continue to support the tradition of having a Queen Annapolisa at the Apple Blossom Festival. Bob felt it was time for a change. When it was clear that the debate was not going his way, he decided to end it. And his comment was, listen, folks, Wolfville does not need another queen. They already have one, and I'm it. Bob did not believe in the politics of confrontation. He felt the town was poorly served by pounding on desks or trying to embarrass someone in the press. But if you crossed a line into what he considered to be sensitivity and sensibility, he didn't let that pass. At a UNSM meeting, when a chair made remarks that had some of us in the audience groaning, Bob was offended. And while some of us would have let it go by, Bob did not. He wrote a very strongly but politely worded letter to the UNSM pointing out the need for chairs to be inclusive of everyone. And it reminded me of the danger that we all face when we sit in silence and don't speak up when something is wrong. Bob never let that pass. Unlike many of today's politicians, Bob was not the kind of leader that always took the mic and only used his counselors as a backdrop. We all had a role to play. At one UNSM conference, a new counselor asked our CAO, Roy Brito, who I'm very pleased to see here today, why the deputy mayor was always the one speaking on behalf of the town rather than the mayor. The CAO's reply was that the mayor did what he did best, and he allowed others to do what they did best. It was a leadership style which gave counselors a sense of empowerment to do more and to take ownership of the changes we were able to make. Bob was a very positive person. He believed in management by walking around, and in walking or driving around the town, he did not look to see what was wrong, but always what was right. If there was something he saw that was not to his liking, it wasn't wrong, it just needed improvement. He had a firm belief that a community was more than asphalt with artificial borders. It was about the people, the festivals, the trees, the walking trails, the parks, and all the good things that made a community that you could be proud of. And let me tell you, he was proud of this town and thrilled when first-time visitors would tell him of how beautiful they found it. I was first elected to Wolfville Council in 1970 while I was still a student at this university, and have served on council committees for over 25 years. I took a couple of breaks at the request of the taxpayer. During that time, I worked with a number of mayors, and I've even been one. Trust me when I say that this community has been blessed by the quality of leadership it has had during that period. But no one I worked with, and I include myself, brought more to the table than Bob Stead. Today we celebrate his life, but we also mourn his passing. We have lost a colleague, a brother, a spouse, and a friend. It has been said that the measure of a person's success in life is whether they have left the world a better place. If judged by that standard, Bob Stead's life was a great success. And we will both miss him in this town and in this province, and we're richer for him having been here. I know personally I will truly miss him.